Hi everyone, and welcome to this uh well this sorry, I'm missing my words. Non-prepared presentation, improvised, that was the word I was looking for, improvised presentation on where we are standing on continuous reliability scans. We're just finishing to break down the two main epics, which are for dependency scanning and container scanning. A lot of work has been done by the team members to split that up into more actionable chunks and better understanding what needs to be done. I cannot make further announcement about how much time it will take because a lot of those issues have not been refined yet. So um, we know what to do. We have removed a lot of the uncertainties that we had a month ago. Because there was a lot of spikes issue that have been completed, and we know which direction we know which direction we want to take. Sorry. So I'm in the process of updating the slides to provide an updated timeline. But this will give you a small overview about what needs to be done now. Please don't pay too much attention about the timing. I was just displaying the little pieces there, but I am not considering any planning for now. So yeah, this is sitting here and there, but this doesn't mean it will be done in that milestone. That will come later. So we've completed the spikes a bit earlier than expected, which is great. So we know exactly what we want to do for storing the advisories, where we want to sync them, etc. We also move forward on looking at the race code base and see what would be the impact, or at least where in the code base we are currently using the current logic that we will have to replace for our continuous scans. So the very first piece, and the color code, sorry, not mentioned there, but went with blue for dependency scanning, green for container scanning, and the purple one is shared pieces that is entirely mutualized between the two. So as you can see, we're pretty happy because we can reuse a lot of things between the two features, which is awesome for maintenance. So the first thing we will have to do is to go expand the current LicenseDB external infra. So we have this external infra with some components running there to gather license information for the various package registries. We store that into a database there, and then we export that into a GCP bucket using some CSV files. And this is what then is synced by the res applications, the self-managed instances and the GitLab.com instance fetch these CSV files from the GCP bucket on a regular schedule, and they fill a local database within the GitLab instance. So we will reuse that architecture, and within the same infra, we will spin up some new component, but we are really trying to replicate the same approach and the same architecture. So we have already a license feeder, a license processor, a license exporter, etc. So we are reusing the same approach for advisories to make that consistent and easier to maintain. So the first piece we want to add is an advisory feeder. This piece is supposed to be mutualized, but the first break will contain the shared piece plus the advisory feeder for dependency scanning, which is taking the Gymnasium, the GitLab advisory database, Git repository, and feed that into the LicenseDB database. Once this is done, this can be extended. So this would be a single project. At least that's the plan so far. I need final confirmation of that, but we will then extend that to include some advisory feeder for some new feeds for container scanning. There is currently an ongoing question. I think, Sarah, you didn't have time to have a look, but I asked you and Sam if for the MVC, we could maybe just focus on one single distro. That doesn't mean we won't have time to add the others, but at least for shipping the MVC, we will only require to have one working distribution. I think that's not a huge time saver in implementation, but in testing, it can be. We've seen that with rolling out license compliance scanner. There was several languages to test at the same time. And anytime there was one that didn't work, the whole piece was blocked, and that was a bit of a shame. So here we would like to have a different approach where we are more granular in the way we're rolling things out, so we can ship at least the end-to-end solution for just a distro and then incrementally add new ones. So that will be the next piece here to add all the other distros. Again, there is no size of the boxes that reflect the lengths of I mean the effort necessary to achieve those features. I need the issue to be refined before doing that. So that's for fetching advisories from outside external database into our licensed DB infra. And then we'll have to create an advisory processor, which basically takes what the feeder sends and takes what the feeder provides and send that to the database. So we also have to update the database with new tables to store advisories there. And once everything is there, there will be a new exporter that takes the data from the database on a regular basis and export that into the GCP bucket. One thing that came out of the spikes is that the CSV format is no longer usable for that usage. So the team has decided to migrate over ND-JSON, which is new line delimited JSON, if I'm saying that correctly, which has some similar advantages to CSV, but some also additional ones or less inconvenience when it comes to expandability, because you can have full JSON objects per row. Again, these are all shared pieces. This will be very generic approach. So whatever the type of advisory is, if it's for CS or DS, it will go through the same process, which is very nice for us. And then the last part would be to ingest this additional advisory data into the REST database. We already have the table there, but it's not fed so far. So we'll have to expand the current sync process or do a different sync worker, etc., to fetch that information and store it into the REST models. This is where we would like to have the incremental rollout, because we're not sure about yet the potential performance issues that we are currently experiencing with the license DB. So this one, we will be much more careful about how we roll things out in the REST instance. There was another big block that was called the CVS logic. This is now broken down further into two main parts. As explained in the very first presentations, to achieve continuous scans, we mainly need two sources of information, the SBOMs on one side and the advisories on one side, and the scan will be triggered by reacting to changes on those two data sources. So the first thing we will be doing is to trigger the scans on the SBOM changes, because that's what's closer to what we do today. It's really similar, actually, because today what we do is we trigger a pipeline, we run the scan in a pipeline, and then we ingest the results at the end of the pipeline. And reacting to SBOM changes will follow the same process, because the SBOM are generated during a pipeline, and then they're ingested at the end of that. So it's really close to existing code base, and this is something we can achieve more easily. So we'll start with that. In the meantime, the Threat Insight team is working on updating a bit the dependency list, so there will be some coordination to happen there. So it's better to delay a bit for us working on the database for SBOMs, if I understood that correctly. So that's why the second part here is coming after, which is reacting on advisory changes. And for this one, we need to rely on having the SBOM in the database, because we know when we sync a new advisory or we update an advisory from the external license DB, we know which package is impacted, but we know have to find all the projects that use that package, or at least affected versions of that package. So for that, we cannot rely on the artifact. We need to have the SBOM components in the database to look up for impacted projects. And then the remaining pieces would be about generating the SBOM on container scanning job. This has started earlier than expected, which is good. It's mostly finished on the first scanner, because container scanning has two scanners. One is Trivy, the other is Gripe. So far, we enabled that for Trivy, and there is a question for you, Sarah and Sam, about do we stay with Trivy for the MVC? which I think would be awesome, because again, this means we can work on adding gripe later down the road, but at least we will have something working more rapidly. Once we have that completed, we will have to make sure that the generated SBOM for continuous scanning is correctly ingested in the race database. There are some changes to happen there, but once this is completed, probably by the end of this milestone, the SBOM will be a brand new feature that we can announce independently, which is great because customers can already leverage that. So here it is. Hopefully this was understandable. Is there any question about what I just presented to you?
All right, no, I think it was super clear. Igor.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna add about this timeline, like maybe this is not the right granularity for the level of granularity for discussion, but one thing that's come out with our general deploy is there's some growing pains around the data set. And I feel like that might either put some, pieces ahead of some of the other, like push some of the things down in order to let us resolve it, or it might actually change the way we implement some of these. So that's just my 2 cents on, I'm not sure if it belongs in this discussion.
You're talking about the impact of the current performance issues we have with LicenseDB?
Yeah, so like let's say we investigate and we decide that absolutely we need to partition before we go further. That might push things off. Probably, there's a high chance we might want to denormalize the database as well to reduce its size. And then the other option might actually be that we decide that that's not at all doable. Like the size of these data sets is just not something that we can store for various reasons, right? Like, for example, one thing we found out with the rollout is not only should we be worried about self-hosted instances, our processes, like our process to sync, competing with the other workers. The other thing we should be worried about is the fact that some of these self-hosted instances are actually disk limited. So we're finding that the amount of space on disk for some of these is actually not enough for the kind of storage that we want to do just with the license data. So I think that probably needs to be investigated. And if that's the case, we're either going to have to make a decision about the lower bound of where this feature is available. Like, do we make it available on a Raspberry Pi or a tool that's an instance that's like 4 gigabytes of disk or 8 gigabytes of disk? And then if depending on that issue, that might change. So that's just kind of that's my thinking on that when I see the linear progression.
Yeah, it did. Thank you for calling it out. Probably would impact this last piece and not so much about the rest, hopefully. But yeah, that's a good call out.
I wanted to add to additional to what Igor just said, because right now with the issue related to the performance of license scanning, Fabian suggested was like kind of as a long-term solution to consider actually storing that in database, if I understand him correctly, and access this data by API. Like I'm saying that, but I'm not really sure how it's supposed to work. And I feel that also might like this decision might affect the this epic for continuous scans as well. But looks like it's indeed only just on the last step.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Olivier, in that on the external side, most of the stuff will continue looking exactly the same. So that can proceed as it is, more or less. But some of the changes might be in the exporter, for example. But yeah, most of the stuff on that side will probably look exactly as we envision.
Indeed. And Tatiana, to add on what you said, the API I think the ideal long-term plan is something we'll definitely discuss, but for after the MVC. I think that for the MVC, if we manage to fix the performance issue for the license DB, it should be acceptable also for advisories. At least that's the current plan. We'll see. But that's the hope we have. But definitely for the long term, there will be a different architecture to consider, because not only this is causing performance issue, but we're also doing very useless consumption of data, of storage, of bandwidths, and then CPU that is costing customers, but also us money for nothing. We can do things much more in a much more smarter way. The API, at least as Fabien started to suggest that, is a very good first step, because it will be actually an API coupled with some local cache. So it's really, you need some data, you don't have it locally, so you go fetch on the API. But the next time you need the information for the same packages, you have them locally. There are some gotchas because this information needs to stay up to date. There might be some polling, some stuff like that, but at least what you get in your local self-managed instance is a subset of what we have in the external license DB, and it's a subset that is useful to you. Still, that still require that the license DB infra has 100% runtime SLA-ish. We're not staffed for that yet. This is not a project that we can yet hand over to the infra team, but this is definitely one of the direction we could take to make that more sustainable. And
do I understand correctly that you say if we will be managed to fix performance issue?
No, I think that the solution that we went with make perfect sense, and that will be way acceptable for an MVC, particularly with the admin panel that allows customers to toggle that off. The remaining question would be, if we face a lot of problem with that, it might means that, well, we just offer customers that are not happy with that solution to run their own license scanner and offer them a way maybe to ingest that information. Similarly to what we do today for dependency scanning, we move to continuous reliability scans, meaning we will no longer leverage the dependency scanning report, but we will still maintain the feature available for third party or customer that want to use their own scanner and feed that into GitLab reliability management system. So in a similar fashion, we can offer a way for people to use their own license scanner and feed that into the Raise application. So far, I say that the direction we are heading toward is having this included in the SBOM. So we had a few issues around that, but I think we moved them to post MVC down the road. But making sure that if the license is provided in the SBOM, we ingest that into our license information, and this is what we display in the UI. So if they're not happy with our approach that require a huge data set to be loaded in their instance, they can turn that off and provide license information with their own way via the SBOM. Hopefully that will solve not everybody's problem, but most of our customers' problem. Great questions. Thank you for asking. Anything else? All right. Thank you for looking at this. Thank you for asking great question. Have a good rest of your day and a good end of your week.
And do we have the dev meeting or not?
Yep. It's in 30 minutes.